Our workshop for December 15th will come to order. Would you rise and join me in a pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. We do always like to remind ourselves why we're here, so we start out by reading our mission and vision statement. Our mission is to foster an environment to educate and empower all students today to become global citizens of tomorrow. And our vision, the Baldwinsville community is committed to providing equitable and diverse learning experiences that educate and empower students, allowing each individual to thrive. So tonight is a workshop, and we do have, I'm sure Tiffany has roll call. Thank you. So we are going to be concentrating on the budget. We'll have a number of presentations. Thank you everyone for being here. So we'll turn it over to Joe, and we can start looking at our initial budget review for the budget of, my goodness, 25, 26. 26, 27. I knew there's something wrong with that. Living with that. Time flies. Time flies when you're having fun, right? That's what it is. Joe?
All right, so we're excited this evening to present our first draft of our 2026-27 proposed budget. It looks like we do have Luke online this evening. So as mentioned, I know Victor did a great job at the beginning with the reading of the mission and vision, and what you'll hopefully find throughout this entire budget presentation today, what we've communicated with our stakeholders that have participated in the Budget Advisory Committee meetings throughout the last month and a half, is that all of the funding, the allocations, the line items that we are presenting here to you this evening focus on our district strategic plan and our priorities, where we're working hard as a school community to build, educate, and empower our students. So you see those connections as we talk about the various areas of the budget this evening. So as mentioned every single year, this process begins early September. Really, I should step back. It really starts July 1. Or shortly thereafter, the budget gets adopted by the board. We begin the process for the following school year. And so in September, you'll remember that the first meeting, you adopted the budget calendar. Following that, we had the virtual budget development meetings with our stakeholder groups. And we're here in December, and we'll talk a little bit more in January when we get the initial runs from the governor's budget for the revenue side. We're taking time to review in our budget work sessions the proposals for 26-27. In March, we'll have the adoption of the budget by the board, if not earlier, and then we'll have the public hearing in May, followed by the budget vote on May 19th. So taking a look, our overall proposal, this is a breakdown, and so it's on the page. You'll see from our proposal the breakdown by each of the core areas within our budget. We'll talk a little bit more about this as we get into each specific area. But I do want to highlight the fact that when we're really thinking about two areas that have been topic of conversation over the last several years, athletics and fine and performing arts, when we really look at the per pupil expenditure that we have for both of those, we actually spend more per student on the fine and performing arts than we do athletics. And I know that's somewhat of a misnomer, or what people believe to be the case, just looking at the dollar amounts that you see there. But when we've done the work, no matter how we look at it, we actually spend about $300 more per student participating in the visual and performing arts. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we have invested significantly over the last several years on the purchases of instruments for our program. Chris will highlight some of that work, ongoing adjustments in his new role being said, we're going to move right into our discussion. Please ask questions along the way, and I'm going to turn things over to Renee, who will walk us through the first section, which is really highlighting all of the instructional areas.
Thank you, Joe. So we always like to start off these budget presentations talking about the fact that this is about students, right? This is about our kids, our staff, the people that work here in the district. And so we just laid out for you here the number of students broken down by grade levels or by their school buildings, so that you can kind of see we've got almost 5,400 students. We're right on the line there. So it's all about our kids, and we have a lot of them. So I'm moving into the instructional budget portion of this. So to put a little bit of a finer point on those numbers, when you look at the instructional budget, a lot of what you see in there is wrapped up in salaries and paying these people to educate our children. And so I've broken it down. There's some notes there for you. Our administrators are at 27, and those include our 2 administrative interns that we have in our buildings, supporting our administrators. And we have our support staff, so these are all the folks who help us out in the buildings, so our secretaries, our aides, our lunch monitors. The largest portion of that number are teachers, our teaching staff. And I have fewer teaching assistants this year because you're gonna see a lot of those folks have shifted over to Carrie's budget. So for the 4 teaching assistants that we support in the instructional budget, those are the folks who sit in our test center and our in-school planning rooms. So those are our instructional staff. So of course, we always like to show you some nice pictures of students learning in our classrooms. And it's always fun to see the littles all the way up to our bigger students there. So we'll start off with 2010. So this is the budget for the Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment Office. So this is my office, and these are the funds that we use to run the office. And what you can see here is, we have an increase in our materials and supplies in this particular budget. So we're finding that we've got, things are costing more, and the office supplies that we're renewing for some of our we have some new personnel, and books. So there are lots of professional books that we purchase and do some book studies around with our administrators, and so we increase that a little bit to help support us in that. The next budget line is 2020. So this is our budget line for all of our BAPIS members, and our BAPIS members are our principals, our assistant principals, our directors. You'll also see in there the building clerical. So that's the clerical that sits in our office, in the CINA office, as well as the building secretaries in all 8 of our buildings. And then you also see in there, we account for mileage and office supplies for the main offices in all 8 buildings. The increases there that you see obviously are our contractual increases aligned to those positions. So the next one, this is our 20, sorry, I have it on my screen here. The 2110s. Oh wait, no, I did miss it. Sorry. Our 2070s, which is our in-service training and instruction. So for this particular budget, you're gonna see, I put some notes in there for you where our instructional salaries. You'll notice that you'll see a significant drop in that particular line, and that's because we've moved these instructional salaries for the summer enrichment to a budget, 2330, that you'll see in a couple more slides. So we didn't get rid of people, we just shifted that money to a different budget. The other things that you'll see in there,
I heard you say why. So the reason we did that is because it's all instructional. And the in-service training is actually part of the administrative component of the budget. So when we break down, when we present the three-part budget to the community, the way it stands, those learning coaches, the professional development, it's in the administrative area. So actually it's going to help reduce our overall administrative costs. It really should be in the instructional area where that's what they're doing. They're providing instruction for students. So we made that shift, and we think that's a piece to emphasize with our school community.
I have a quick question too. Are certain areas funded differently and that kind of thing too, where we get more for it from federal or local, state, and that kind of thing?
So within the budget that you're seeing here, we're accounting for just the general fund. So this is anything that we're paying for out of taxpayer state aid. Any of the funding that we would receive for any grants or other sources would be supplemented. You're not going to see that necessarily on this presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
On 2010 and 2020, I noticed, as Renee said, most of the increase was related to salaries, right, contractual commitments. But I don't think we ever approved like an 8% and a 7% increase. So is it additional people?
No, it's not. So in many of those cases, it could be as we're adjusting the budget, we're trying to get the more and more that Tiffany is working along here. We're making sure that we have the right dollar amounts allocated, and so within many of the contractual agreements, if there are employees that are not utilizing vacation time, they have the ability to sell back that vacation time. And so in the past, we haven't, that's just come out of another fund and we've transferred money. We're trying to be a lot more transparent about how much truly it is costing for those areas. So the budget lines you see there, where you see that increase, it is accounting for the assumption that if they didn't use all of their vacation days up to the max that they can sell back, that would be included in those salaries that are listed.
I want to make sure I understood what you just said. So what's happening is we're estimating, it's not an estimate, it's actually not how much a person could, I guess,
The maximum.
sell back.
The maximum.
Yeah. And including that as a budgeted number, rather than sort of working out of the back end based on what the actual.
And then having to come to you to have money transferred, because it really, we're gonna end up transferring into that code at some point anyway, if they end up selling those days back. So what we're trying to do is to make sure that we're putting what is the maximum cost for any of those administrative or line items that are listed there, and that's what you see being presented. That's why you see some of a larger jump. Just to be completely honest, for those that are watching in the public, this coming year for many of those positions, the salary increase that was approved based on the terms and conditions is a 3.9% increase.
And so with that, I think what that means, 12 to 14 months from now, when we're looking at our actions from this coming year.
Yep.
Those numbers are going to probably adjust down because not everyone's going to sell back all.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. But we don't want to not have, what is the, I guess, liability budgeted, because then we might find ourselves.
So you got the choice of budgeting the max or doing a budget transfer later.
Correct. And we felt it's just be transparent, these are what it costs for these positions, put it out there.
Okay, so those are my questions. Thank you, Joe, for answering them. The 2070s, I'll go back to where we talked about how we moved the summer enrichment salaries. You'll see that, like I said, in another couple slides coming up there. The other things that you see there are from every year we do. We have EJAC Trina, we contract with inclusive schooling, we have tuition reimbursements that we have to here, so they have, excuse me, materials and supplies that we also provide for them for those trainings. The BOCES services that you see there, those are initial estimates, and those are gonna change once those initial services are firmed up over the course of the year.
You'll notice that's about a 4% increase with the BOCES services. That's what we did pretty much across the board.
So the 2110, this is where we talked about all the people that are teaching our students. So there are some notes in here. We'll talk a little bit about the areas that I have underlined in green and red. So you'll see that there is a reduction in the teachers' salaries at K-3. That's not because we've gotten rid of teachers, but that's because of retirements typically. And when we hire new staff, they don't cost as much. So you'll see that.
And just to clarify that, that's retirements from what we had planned on, or what we had budgeted when we presented to the board last year, anybody who retired after that point, because we're at the point now with even what we're presenting here, we haven't included any retirements for 26, 27, because by the time we get there, so there's always gonna be, some flexibility. Like what we know right now is we have 6 individuals that are retiring, and their full salaries are still in the budget, and unless we get into a situation where we need to make that reduction for what we would have for a new employee, we'd like to try to leave that in there just to have a little bit of additional fund balance in the event that we have to hire additional staff. As we know, enrollments change over the course of the summer.
So you're projecting the same number of teachers next year, or additional teachers, or fewer teachers?
Yeah, right at the same number.
We're anticipating the exact same number of teachers that we have this year. For example, at the elementary level, just across the board for just PK to 5 instruction, we have 116 teachers, regular education teachers that support students. Based on how enrollments are trending, we are anticipating that same number, leaving some flexibility in the event that we have an influx at a grade level where we need to bring an additional person on. We may not fill all those, it all depends. We won't know that until we get to the end of the school year, but we're planning for that.
So was there any thought given to increasing the number of elementary to lower class sizes? And I guess, coincidentally, what is our average class size in elementary?
Yeah, so that's gonna vary based on grade level, and I can, while we're continuing on, I can pull up some exact numbers to give you that. I don't have that off the top of my head. But what I will tell you though is that because of our construction that's happening across the district, we're not anticipating adding additional numbers of classrooms at the elementary level until we get through this first wave of construction next year. Next year is going to be tight across the district with the number of classrooms because of the construction. And if you think back to why we're doing the funding improvements and building the future, things will lighten up for the fall of 28, 29 when we're able to move students, grades 4 and 5 into Ray, so that we can add more staff to potentially reduce the class sizes. On average, our district average is around 20, if I remember the contract language. It's around 20 for PK, K, and 1, and then it bumps up to 23 for those other grade levels, and 5 and 6, that average based on contract can't exceed 23. But I will give you, while Renee's talking, I'll pull up the exact numbers. What's that?
PK 24?
No, PK 20.
20, okay.
18 specifically
I
for
thought it
pre-K,
was, I
but
thought it was.
the average between PK, K, and 1 is around 20. When we look at those 3 grade levels combined, the district average, that's what is listed within the contract. But we do not add any more students at UPK above 18, because if we do that, we're required by the law to have an additional teaching assistant hired, and that doesn't really sense to do that. We're just better off adding another UPK section to keep class sizes reasonable.
And am I remembering correctly that the foundation aid that you're projecting is decreasing a little bit for pre-K?
So,
Yeah. Good question.
we're not actually decreasing in foundation aid with, so UPK, what we're anticipating is the UPK funding that we receive from the state to be somewhat consistent, because our enrollment has gone up. The last few years, we've been given more money, but just based on the number of sections that we can offer, we never take full advantage of what the state is able to provide for us. So I would anticipate that being somewhat the same.
Also, so I saw the same thing Christie saw, and you said, here's what we got last year,
Mhm.
and here's what we're getting this year. And that was, what, 400,000 less. But that, what you're doing is you're showing what we could have gotten.
Correct.
Had we used our full enrollment.
Correct.
Because on pre-K, our issue right now is we don't have enough space to do the full class of about 400. So we have about 200 kids that we can handle facilities-wise, and then there's 2 other nurseries that have about 25 kids per class. So it's about 250 kids out of potential 400 getting the pre-K curriculum.
That is correct, yeah.
Okay, and so we'll continue on, per the, discussion about the teaching assistants moving out of my budget, you'll see a reduction there in that line. And, also in the 150 instructional salaries, you'll see an increase there. That's mostly due to the security that we have to offer. So we're paying people, to do the security events at all of our buildings, and so you'll see that bump up in there. If you go down to the 200 line for equipment, we continue to shift instruments over to the arts and education program for the music program, so you'll see a little bit of a reduction there. And you'll also see in the 400 line the reduction in the SRPOs, because we are now shifting those. You'll see that money show up in another budget line because we're shifting those folks over to SROs and only completing employees of the district. The other one that I'll note on here is 480 textbooks. So we're adding an additional $50,000 to that budget code, so that in anticipation of the K-6 program, ELA program, that we will be piloting in January. So if the pilot goes well and everything works out the way it should, we will be looking to purchase on a rollout basis a new ELA program. So we've added some funds there to help support that. And the next one, the 2280. So 2280 is all about CTE, Career Technical Education. These are the numbers for the seats that we have at OC's programs. Anything that's related to the medical, health, and culinary arts, auto, all of those things, and the New Visions program, as well as our district purchases one seat at the STEAM school that's in Syracuse, and that pulls from surrounding districts.
Just to
And-
clarify, we're anticipating purchasing one seat. We haven't
Sorry.
purchased one yet. We do have at least one application that's been submitted, that we reviewed. As you know, this is the first year of the STEAM school, so this person would be a current 8th grade student going into 9th grade, and is that regional partnership. So, assuming there's not additional and we have flexibility, but we're anticipating, like most schools, I think for the first time had, one student, if they had one this current school year.
There's, I think there are 3 additional applications that have been given to students, but they have not come back in. So there is a deadline, before break for those apps to come in. So, we'll see. The next one is 2330, Teaching of Special Schools. So this is our instructional salaries, the 150, that's where we see that summer enrichment that got shifted out of the other budget. This is where it's showing up here. And then we always offer regional summer school for our students, and that's accounted here in the 490 code. So it seems like a really big increase, but that's just because of the shift. Otherwise, it would be, we put in the notes there that this would have just been a regular 4% increase without that shift of the money in that code. The next one is 2510 preschool. So every year we account for an additional preschool section if we can, if it's needed and we can find space for it per Joe. And otherwise that becomes fund balance if it's not used. And our teaching assistants, as Joe said earlier, some of this you won't see because you know, it's based on need, and some of those salaries are also in grant funding. The attendance regular school, so this, you see a huge increase here. That's where I mentioned the SRPOs coming down to this line. We've put them in the attendance officer code, and so now they're SROs, so that's where you see that huge jump there. Our BOCE services, again, this one, 490, is our school tool, student management program that we use. So that is, again, we put in the notes there that this would be a 4% increase if there wasn't that movement of the budgets, or the SRPO budgets. The next one is 2850, those are the co-curricular activities. So these are all the activities that are our enrichment, our extracurricular activities that we offer after school that are non-athletic. So obviously Chris will talk about his athletics, and so the instructional salaries are our advisors for those programs. We offer a significant number of programs for our students after school, and our non-instructional salaries are for those folks who offer after-school supervision in some of our study halls and things like that, the athletic study halls. And also we provide materials and supplies to those advisors to run those programs.
Dennis, what was the big dip in the current? So we went from 438,000 to 279, now we want to go back to 445. What was that change in there?
I don't know, is there a?
Big dip last year,
I
this
think-
year.
I think when we were initially presenting the budget last year, and when we had the budget adopted, if we knew that we had fund balance, if we needed to make transfers, there were some changes in personnel, we had just negotiated a contract for this calendar year that was approved by the board. And what you see now for 26-27 is more closely aligned. It's pretty much, we took every single opportunity with that new finalized contract and those rates, and that's what's reflected there. I don't believe in 25-26 we had the true picture, knowing that we had flexibility.
So when you do a budget transfer though, are you actually changing the current year's budget when you do it, or you're just transferring funds?
It's just a transfer.
But yeah, so that's what,
But it is going into
Yeah,
that.
it's
So,
going into the account,
so
it's going into
in,
the right account.
in theory, in 25-26, and we can get this for you, I would assume, at this point that, you know, what we'll actually spend in 25-26 will look more like $440,000-ish because of the transfers that we made.
And to wrap us up, this is, the instructional budget is arguably the largest portion of the total budget. So right now it stands at a 1.8% increase that we're anticipating with the budget that we're proposing.
Any other questions for Renee as we start to transition to?
Can I say something? So the benefits portion of of the budget. I don't think we're covering specifics on that, are we?
That'll be later on, Tiffany will talk briefly about that,
Okay.
in the debt service
Fine.
benefits portion.
Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna transition to fine and performing arts, and Chris Denton is here.
Hello, good evening, everybody. So the first slide is a representation of all of the staff that's dedicated to the visual and performing arts in our district. Renee already talked a little bit about the teachers, right? So the teachers here, the administrative and clerical that are represented in this graphic are covered in other budget lines, but we wanted you to see that these are the number of staff members that we have dedicated to the visual and performing arts in our district, including those, 105 give or take stipend positions. Those are all of our advisors, our directors of our music programs and any of our extracurricular theater programs. And being new in my role and having had some knowledge over the years of the number of people that it takes to pull these programs off and to give our students the experiences that they have, it's been very eye-opening to actually meet all of these people and truly see the impact that all of these folks have and how important they are to making our programs as successful as they are. So that's an important number, and obviously shows the dedication by our district to offer the best possible opportunities for our students in these areas.
Chris, can I just ask you a quick question?
Yes, sir.
The total of our bubbles here is 143.
Yes, sir.
Does that mean that no music teachers, no art teachers take stipended positions?
Say that again.
Does that mean that none of the music teachers and none of the art teachers take stipended positions?
No, they do, but those additional, it's not individual people, it's the number of positions. So even though you have a music teacher that's teaching in a class, they fill another role if they're taking on one of those stipend positions.
Okay, so for this rep, they accounted for us.
Yep, they could be accounted more than that because they fill several different positions for different activities, right? And I think it's the number of positions that I think is an important representation because those individual positions represent additional time that people are spending with our students. So I think that's why that number is really critically important. So the next piece of this, obviously just some, as Renee said, we like to share photos of our students in action, and our programs here in Baldwinsville really are, they're second to none, when it comes to performing on the local, the state, and even on the national stage. And historically, our whole community has had so much pride in the accomplishments of our artists and musicians with national recognition in the arts, national recognition when you turn on the TV and see our students marching at the Rose Bowl Parade. And I know that, we have some new staff in place, and I know that, we're in the process of seeing what the future brings for some of those other additional national type opportunities. So again, this is just a great visual representation of just all the tremendous experience that our students get to have, including our pep band. During the winter break will be the house band at Syracuse University, which is, I believe the stat is we're like the only high school in Division I in the United States that has had the opportunity to represent Division I athletic teams on the national stage. So that's a huge deal. So we're very excited about that.
I was gonna bring that up because I saw that on the Facebook today, and I think they're doing like 6 games, which is
Yeah.
more than I think they've done before for both men and women. So
Yep.
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very, very exciting, and it's a phenomenal experience for our students, and I think really propels them to a whole different level of opportunity and experience, to be able to do that. So we're fortunate living where we live that we can just, load a few buses up and send them right up to the university without too much trouble. But I'm just thrilled that we're able to take advantage of that opportunity, and that the university recognizes the talent we have here in our students and in our program, and puts that level of faith in us. So it's very exciting. The clerical here, it's coded under clerical, but just to start at the top of the list there is our theater manager position, which again, in the little bit of time that I've been on the team and kind of observing the activities and the things that happen really nonstop in our Baker High School auditorium and theater. That position is a critical position and one that we're grateful to have in the budget. You'll notice that there are some. What we try and do when it comes to equipment, especially for the theater, for example, is there is maintenance and upkeep that comes with that. So you'll see some representation of some things that we've gotten some quotes on to make sure that we are kind of proactive in how we're purchasing equipment to keep us in a good spot with all of our programs. The theater is a highly technical, it is an advanced operation, and just the amount of equipment that the district has dedicated to that space, and really the amount of knowledge and kind of upkeep that comes along with that, so that we're able to provide the concert experiences and the stage experiences for our students. It's critically important. So I think we've done a good job of trying to stay proactive about how we invest in making sure that space stays in good functioning order. In there's a contractual code for other incidental maintenance and things that we have to have inspected every year or repaired. And you'll notice there in materials and supplies there's some increase, but one of the things I wanted to note here was that in the BOCES service area, and I think Renee mentioned this a little bit, so we're using the Arts and Ed program funding through BOCES to give us some return on our investment, right? So we get money back from the state on money that's spent through that Arts and Ed program. And so with our instrument program that our board here has supported, we're purchasing all of the instruments for the first year students in the elementary, 3rd and 4th grade, third grade for orchestra, 4th grade for our WIN program, and all of those purchases are going through the Arts and Ed program. In addition to that, Arts and Ed, the funding in that line is also attached to different experiences that our principals and staff may want to offer to our students that are related to visual and performing arts. All of our registration fees for our students that are participating in the Scholastics Art Program, for example, all of those fees go through Arts and Ed. Students that are being taken by staff to go to Syracuse Stage, for example, ticket costs, those things are all put through Arts and Ed. So I think we're really in a good spot where we're maximizing the benefit and getting as much aid as we can back on those large purchases. And the difference really between the 24-25 expenditure really has to do with the fact that in Arts and Ed, that was the initial year or two of that first push to buy instruments for students. And I will say that the participation rates are huge. I think in previous years we've seen you see a fall off between elementary and secondary because kids get busy with other activities. It's not uncommon, but my prediction is that we're starting to already see this as students progress through into Ray and into Durkee. We're going to have larger ensembles. It's just we're going which equates to more students benefiting from the opportunities that are being provided, because there are a lot of kids that are playing instruments and have instruments right now because of what this district has done that would not have had those instruments, and they would not have had those opportunities. So I think over time we're going to see that this investment has a huge payoff in the fact that we have more students that are participating in the arts, and that's incredible. So that's something we should be very proud of, and especially our district administration and our Board of Education. So.
Quick question.
Oh, go ahead, Wayne.
Okay. On the materials and supplies, is there like one specific item or something that's causing that to go up so much, or is it just overall a bunch of different things?
I would say that the additional cost there we're seeing is because now that we own all these instruments, right? We have to, you don't send kids home with an instrument that needs strings, right? Or ask the parents to buy the strings. So we're in a spot now where we own all these instruments, we have to pay to maintain them. So that's where you see that increase, and I can see that we still have a few years of purchasing instruments. So I think the reality is that number's probably going to increase a little bit as our inventory of instrument increases.
Okay.
I think, we'll be in a good spot once the dust will settle and we have a good stock of instrument really for all of our grade levels. And I think it will be, a very manageable thing. But again, a tremendously positive
Sure.
investment.
Yeah, so that was gonna be my follow-up then. So, like you said, it eventually will stabilize and be a more consistent number over time. once all that stuff
Absolutely.
is okay.
I think we'll get to a place where we kind of know this, barring, natural increases in the cost of goods and materials. I think we'll get to a place where we're, we know we're gonna need to budget this amount of money every year for the standard upkeep. One of the things that's mentioned in there, contractual too, I think part of that is, repair costs for instruments too. So, and that, that happens, I'll get pictures from time to time of an instrument that, went home on a bus and Brother Billy had an accident, tripped over it or something, and it's not destroyed, but it's repairable, and, we wanna make sure that we're keeping those things, taken care of.
Yeah, I kind of had a similar question, but maybe a little different. In terms of like the tech side of theater, like, because I think that would be good expenditures if we're staying on the cutting edge of lighting and
Yeah.
sound. Are the kids engaged in that aspect of it as well with our?
Yeah,
auditorium?
I think that's one of the huge upsides of the fact that when we put this theater program, when we put the updated theater in play as a space, one of the things that we prioritized was giving access to students, and that's why we've got a technical theater course. So we've actually built courses into the curriculum that are allowing students that have an interest to have hands-on experience and this is, it's huge experience for kids kids are making decisions about their futures because they're having the opportunity to engage with, with the lighting equipment that we have, the sound equipment. And I will say, a really important part of that has been the teachers that are teaching those classes, but also that auditorium coordinator, because part of what they're doing is they do also some supervision with, we have something called the Q Crew, which is a group of students that participate in providing light and sound support for all of our theater productions as well as concerts. So they get opportunities through a Google Classroom site where, if they want to come and help program lights for an upcoming elementary concert, they get opportunities to do that. And I'm going to be looking, in my new position, I'm going to be looking for new opportunities for students to continue to, for us to expand the level of access and opportunity that we offer to our students. So I think there's more to come there in that realm for sure. And then just the last piece real quickly is the co-curricular stuff. So this is these are our budget lines for our materials and supplies and for our contractual expenses for our marching band, which is field band, parade band, our drum line, winter guard, as well as our BTAP programs, which is the junior high musical, the high school musical, and the senior high school play. So I think we're in a fantastic spot with that. We're really excited about the upcoming show that we have. Wizard of Oz was a huge hit for our junior high musical this year, and we have a really great traditional music band to look forward to in February.
So we will now switch gears to student services with Carrie and Jenna.
Good evening. So not to sound like a broken record, I know you've heard me say this before, when projecting money finances for what it might cost to operate student services, special education specifically, can be a little difficult. We have to make reasonable predictions. We try to do that by knowing our students and basing, predictions on the students that we know might be exiting, their programming services and how well they're doing, and trying to keep an eye on that. Specifically for the special education piece, much of that focus comes from those individual education plan meetings, which happen in the spring. So they haven't happened yet, so we're kind of doing our best at this point to project out based on what we think could happen and what we know up until this point. On the first few slides, you'll see we have students with IEPs, 504 plans, students that are attending special programs, and the next two slides are the staff and that support those students with programs. On each slide, you will see it broken down by department. You'll see salaries, contractual raises, equipment, supplies and materials for each of those departments. The first set of budget codes, the 2250, those are codes that, and money that supports are in place for students that are labeled as having disability. And here you will note, we are up about 14% overall. We would ask if you recall last year we did remain stable. We did not have an increase at all for this department. We've actually had to hire additional TAs and their contract was a little different, so their salaries were a little bit more increased. Teaching assistants are a very critical part of our special education services. That support is recommended on an IEP. Again, that will happen in the spring, so we may not have known all of those things going into this current school year. And then we do have a large influx of students that move in with a teaching assistant on their IEP. That always is something that we kind of have to negotiate. Then we have alternate instruction. Students with disabilities sometimes require home instruction. All of the increases are contractual, though, for the most part, on the other salaries. For home instruction, those are students that might be placed based on a recommendation by a physician and or a CSE meeting. Next, we have non-instructional salaries, and those are for our occupational and physical therapists. And then we have the clerical supports that support the student services office. For the remainder of the instructional salary codes, we're not projecting or proposing any increases at this point because, again, we're trying to be fiscally responsible with the increases that we had going into the school year that we may not have been able to predict. The equipment code is a little bit more predictable. That's something that we are able to estimate based on and we do think about that as our departments. Next year, we need a bigger bike for our students at the junior high school, and then we do need a swing at our middle school, so we have estimated those in there. Supplies and materials are supports that go directly to students in each per building based on the number of identified students. And again, those are things that are needed that are less than $1,000. They don't go into the equipment. Contractual services, those are services we're paying for. You'll see that both in student services for special education and health. And those are services, not a good that we might need someone to come in and do a service for us. And you'll see that in both of those departments. And then we do have two tuition codes. One is allocated for students who may need residential programming, and the other is for mental health tutoring costs when students are placed temporarily in the hospital. Again, those aren't necessarily things that we can predict, and one student being recommended for residential can be very high cost and unpredictable, so we do like to have some fund balance in there. One other thing to point out is that we did do an overall 4% increase at this point for BOCES services. We're waiting for those final budgets, so that could change a little. And if that were to have a really good update, you wouldn't get that. The
Carrie,
next.
when you say BOCES services, could you tell me what is that?
So we have about approximately 40 students that are in BOCES programs, not in district programs.
So that number of 42 that was on the 40 is that?
Correct.
So if you think back to the work session last, before November, you weren't here, but we did present on the alternate programs, with the exception of the Be Connected program. All of the others that were listed that we reviewed were somehow connected to OC and BOCES. And so some of those programs, students with disabilities also attend, others they don't. But what is in her budget is specifically programs for students with disabilities, or labeled as having a disability.
Yeah, and also there are some services that are provided in district, like the BOCES audiologist is somebody we contract for, so that cost is in there as well. Teacher of the visually impaired, those are services that do come to us in the district. Sure.
So, I think I can't do this math this straightforwardly, but if I just take the 1380 students and divide by 58.5 special ed teachers, that gives me about 24 students that each special ed teacher is responsible for. I don't think I can do the math that straightforwardly, so do you know how many students each special ed teacher is responsible for?
That's a trick question.
I'm
so
sorry.
It's okay.
No, I knew I probably
yeah.
was, the math wasn't that
Yeah.
straightforward because there are kids that are out of the
Yes.
district and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good question and a great thing to point out, but it'd be difficult to answer. That works at the elementary level, right? Because, and I would say an average caseload for an elementary teacher is probably 12. Could be a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on what they're doing, right? So if they're doing co-teaching and they have a larger cohort, they might have smaller caseload of students. If they're doing more supplemental, like a consultant teacher on top of a co-teaching, they might have closer to 12 or 13. At the secondary level, they might have more kids on their caseload, but they're co-teaching in a classroom with a teacher, and they might be teaching that same section multiple times. So they would have more students on their caseload. The way that we kind of be more flexible with how we support them is they might be a case manager for a student who has multiple sections of a co-teaching. That person is sort of collaborating with the other teachers that support them to code the IEPs and do some of those more time-consuming responsibilities. But as far as the teaching instructional piece of it, they're teaching the same content multiple times. So, I don't know, did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, it's helpful. I was just trying to figure out, is there some information we can use to gauge, whether we have enough special ed
Sure.
teachers or whether they have, a huge number of students they're responsible for. But it sounds like in terms of doing the IEP, overseeing the IEPs, preparing the IEPs, doing all of that paperwork, they're not overly burdened with, a huge number.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes they might feel that way. Certainly, I think we all feel that way sometimes. So I don't want to minimize or say that I don't feel like they have a lot of responsibility. But I will say that over the past 6 years, we have increased the number of special education teachers in the district by a significant number. We have 6 special education teachers at every elementary building. So ideally, there would potentially be one at every grade level. That doesn't always work out well because, you could have because again, with student services or special education, you could have a cohort of students where, for whatever reason, that particular year in that building, there is a higher number of students with needs. The next year could be lower. So we're constantly trying to look at, again, student need first, and then how we can be flexible with our students, but we have been able to significantly reduce their caseloads. Last year, we did add a special education teacher at Baker. We know that we have a little bit of a higher number of kids coming up from Durkee, so we're preparing for that ahead of time. So those are things that we do think about. We also increased a physical therapist last year. So when we need to, we do. It can be a little bit tricky, and that's not to say that, like I said, with special education, those numbers can change and we might have to come back. But right now, that's where we are.
That's helpful.
We also have flexibility within the budget, as mentioned earlier, that as we are finishing annual reviews, we're assessing how many sections we're gonna have, which typically happens around April, May timeframe. We have the flexibility that if we need to increase staff, we'll be coming to the board with, a recommendation for increasing an FTE or two as needed. The other piece I wanted to point out, and I don't know if I'm stealing Don's question, but I saw his face when we were talking about the jump between 25, 26, 26, 27 for instructional salaries, you know, just under $1 million. One of the reasons why you see a jump there too is we're also anticipating, because in prior years, a lot of our special education staff were supported through the IDEA grant, and so one of the things that we've been doing over time is trying to address that. In the event that we don't get as much federal funding, no matter what program it is, we have the salaries in our general fund so that we can support them. You know, not everybody has the luxury of being able to do that, and so we want to try to have everyone outlined within our general fund budget so that if those additional funds go away, we have the ability to sustain our programs. So if we don't utilize that money because we do receive funding, that's just fund balance that we can apply to other things.
Yeah, and just, so I was, and I actually made the assumption about the instructional salaries. Actually, I was thinking that was probably federal investment. So we're looking for the TA line, looking at just a hair over $1 million plus side from this year's adopted to proposed. And I think we mentioned it's because we're actually increasing staff because of program needs, right?
Yeah,
Are those?
some of it is based on students with IEPs coming into the district or needs changing, and so we have to hire additional one-on-one support students. The other piece too is we've eliminated some of the teaching assistants within the instructional side that have now shifted over. Their salaries are, because they're doing the work of teaching assistant one-to-ones within the special education portion of the budget. So you'll see, so that full $1 million increase doesn't necessarily reflect $1 million worth of teaching. It's a shift from some instructional budget, as Renee mentioned, into special ed, but then on top of that, additional staff as needs arise. And also because all of the teaching assistants are essentially in the special education budget, that increase also reflects the new change with the contract that was approved this year. So the contractual raises are accounted for within that $1 million increase.
So have we been adding FTE as this current year has gone on in TAs?
I'll look to Dave and Terry for that, but we have continued to hire. It's all based on if we've added anybody, it's been based on the fact that we've had students move into the district or each change that we haven't accounted for when the school year started.
Okay. And we're moving, obviously, we've got to move money into this.
Yep.
For that.
So occasionally you'll have seen budget transfers over the course of the last month or two where we've made those adjustments.
That's what I was asking. Those are the adjustments we're making.
Yep.
Okay.
One of the things though is we're still in the process of hiring, so some positions aren't filled. It seems like we hire somebody and then somebody leaves, either they're retiring or moving off to do some other type of work. So we're in this constant game of consistently advertising, and I think we talked about it at the previous board meeting or work session, or maybe it was in another discussion, but we have an ongoing recruitment for teaching assistants because it's a never-ending battle to fill every single position.
And that's where I was going. I'm assuming that the dynamic that's in play right now, right, for the first half of the second year, is sort of the trajectory that we're using to come up with this the proposal for next year. Okay. All right. Thank you.
No, I was just gonna say, the number of PAs is similar, maybe a little more than the previous year and stuff, but we've shifted TAs from different positions into the special ed positions because we went away from like the RTI teaching assistant, things like that, where we went into like some special ed teachers or other teachers doing those positions, and then shifted TAs over into that. So the actual number is not a huge increase, it's just where those are being seen in the budget.
Yes, and so for next year, one of the big things that we look at are students incoming that are, in what we would call a special education program or preschool. So we know those students are gonna transition to kindergarten, they might need more support. One of the other things I would point out is that, you know, being mindful to our philosophy and inclusive mindset, when we get students that transfer in from out of district in a special placement, we do our best to try to support them in the regular education setting. So if they're coming from a self-contained setting, and we're talking about the regular education setting or co-teaching program, we might allocate them a teaching assistant, especially if they have one coming in, so that we can make sure to support them. So those are the kinds of things that we're looking at.
Just to also put it in perspective, so let's just say we have 120 teaching assistants, which I know we have more than that. But given the contract that was approved, remember, it's a flat rate of $4,000 increase for each of those VESPA unit members. So right there, for those 120 individuals, the total is $480,000. So that also is another way to look at some of that increase.
Yeah, what I'm just trying to get in my head is really to take, I'm trying to get a better grasp on what we actually need in TAs for special ed, right? Because as these things get transferred from other areas, what it means is we sort of misidentified, or, you know, we're changing the way we do things and redefining it a little bit. So I'm just trying to get an idea for what it really should be, because, you know, a projection is just a very sophisticated estimate, right? And we could be off, we could be under. So, just trying to keep those things kind of in perspective.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I led with, was it very hard to predict. And just, you know, I think to clarify what David said is, it didn't change our number necessarily as far as like what we needed or predicted, but we were having trouble hiring for needed positions. So what it did was shift the need to which was on a student's IEP, so that person could be allocated to support that need that was on a, you know, legal document for a student that needed it, versus program support that could be better provided by a teacher. So we were just kind of trying to figure out how to best move the needs of all of our students.
Yeah, and my point on this is that that's really important information for the board to have, right?
Yep.
We need to know what you guys need.
Yep.
And this process of clarifying that is very helpful to us.
Yep.
As we think about, you know, what it is we need from you.
Yep. Yep. And so, yeah, that's all you need. That's why we're gonna keep that position open. It's on there, and then in that way, it's kind of an ongoing process, just like substitutes, where we're always looking at it and always have hopefully an available pool of people that we can hire if we need them. Any other questions? Okay, so the next one, the next codes are 2810. Those encompass school counseling services. That first salary there, that's a TA career resource teaching assistant, and this is for a staff member that supports our BEST program. He acts as the coordinator for students that are doing job coaching. We have school counselor salaries and the clerical support that support the secondary guidance offices, as well as materials and supplies that support those offices. In here, you'll see another BOCES services code, and that specifically is for test scoring. On the next slide, 2815, those are salaries that support the nurse's office, and again, similar to the students' special education codes, you'll see we have equipment that's projected based on need, contractual services similar for inspections, medical equipment, and finally materials and supplies, which are allocated by building for the nurses' offices. And next are school psychologists. We have 9 in each building, and a district level psychologist who oversees our preschool IEPs and chairs those meetings. And then you'll see specifically some test supplies here that are needed for evaluations that they complete. On the next slide, that 2825, this is for social workers. We have 1 social worker in each building. And then we do have people services, 2830. These are instructional salaries or funds that are set aside actually for support staff in times of crisis, supplies for crisis support, and then specific conference money for specialized professional development for some of our people that they can't get it locally, so there might be a need for that sometimes. This next slide, this is it says transfer special aid fund. What that actually is, or what that code means, that's our extended school year program. And then on the last slide, you'll see, as noted before, overall an increase of 12%, but as we talked about, that increase directly is supporting students. One of the questions was, what do we need? We're up 14%, so we're walking a fine line. We're doing our best to fulfill those needs, and not even knowing what they are yet, but also being fiscally responsible. And we may come back and tell you we need more, but this is where we're at right now.
Jared, are we seeing an increase every year of the need? Is there a pretty consistent increase in students that have 504s and everything?
No, our percentage of identified students really has remained pretty stable at about 15%, depending on the time of year. Like, we start the year a little lower because we'll lose, a group of identified students as seniors. Our 504s, we get a lot of requests. That can be, difficult. I think there's a lot of time consuming things that go into the process as far as figuring out who really needs that 504. I can't say that the numbers are necessarily higher, or even the needs. Like, I know there's a perception sometimes that kids are harder. I don't necessarily see that. I think there's social media plays a role, and I think honestly the biggest thing that I see, or that I've seen in just my limited time in this office, is that Baldwinsville is a place where people want to be when their students are identified. And I know that that's where that can be hard, because it can be middle of the year. It's harder to predict. Like I said, we have a process. We know our preschoolers, we know our kids. We're working with BOCES, we're bringing kids back, we're trying to support kids in regular education, and we're towing the line with all that. It can be harder to predict a family that's gonna move in, and have, some significant needs, and what they might need for that. So I think that's the biggest challenge in our department.
Any other questions for the board related to student services? And third, we'll transition to athletics. Chris?
Alrighty, so hello everybody, and we'll get started with athletics. Obviously, from last year, with where we are to where we are this year, we did add some coaching staff, which I'll share with you as we move through. We could go to the athletic highlights. On the next page. So here are some of the highlights that we kind of set forth from last year to where we are this year. Last year we had 13 New York State Scholar athletes. 12 teams. This year we had 13, so all fall varsity teams did meet the criteria of 75% of the team roster either had a GPA of 90 or greater. So that was definitely a plus, having all the teams do that. Last year, we signed 13 athletes with the letters of intent, and this November 12th, we signed 15 athletes to play at the collegiate level, whether it's junior college, D1, D2, D3. So it's just a good celebration of our athletes. Boys soccer, we had a three-peat, 3 years in a row where we were section class AAA champs. New York State Regional, won that game, and we went to the Final Four down in Middletown, and unfortunately our luck ran out, but we did place 3rd overall in the state in class AAA, which is a pretty cool carrot to have on their caps. We had 2 coaches that finished the season as Section 3. Chris Ludden was a Section 3 Class A Coach of the Year. Coach Ski Maker, as you know, he's since going to retire. Went out on a high note where he was the SEAC Metro Coach of the Year. Girls swim, we won the Section 3 championship. We also won the events in the 500 free, 100 fly, 100 back, 400 free relay. And Olivia McManus competed in the state championship in the 50 free and the 100 fly. Girls tennis had a great season. We kind of captured both the doubles and singles. Ayla Kalfas won the singles, and the sisters combination of Sonia and Mira Nadsden won the doubles for the section, and all students competed in the New York State Championships down in Flushing, down in Queens. We also had a girls runner compete in the state championship, placed 22nd overall. And I guess I'd be remiss to not highlight our 2 landmark athletic facilities that we opened up this fall. Many of you were there with the multi-purpose field and the new Durkee Gymnasium. And if you were there, you could obviously feel how prideful that those days were for the community, for the students, obviously fine arts, PE classes. But there's really a sense of pride that we've all felt. I know having visitors come in, we just had Steve Dunham, who's the superintendent at West Hills, officiating a basketball game, and he said that our campus is like a college campus, and was really taken back by how beautiful the Durkee gym was. So definitely 2 big prideful things that we had go on this fall with those 2 facilities. So I wanted to make sure I made note of that. The first 2 pages of my budget are really not too exciting, but if you look at the equipment part, as I've stated the last several years, we really did a nice job in getting all the new equipment at Baker, Durkee, and a little bit over at Ray. So we've got the equipment where we need to. We just have to make sure that we have enough for upkeep, repairs. And if there are any ticket items that we're looking at, obviously Ray going into construction, we're gonna figure out what we're gonna do for equipment over there, and time will tell what we're gonna look at that. But to say that our Durkee and Baker gyms are in a good spot with the weight rooms is definitely an understatement. We're in a great spot, and just making sure to maintain the equipment each and every year is definitely something to do. Materials and supplies. That other part is just to give you a scope of, that's all the supplies for K all the way up to Baker, including APE, and that money's allotted for the PE teachers to purchase supplies for their students on a year-to-year basis. And then the next slide is kind of, we're keeping this where it's at, and again, it's looking at the weight room. We're looking at the Durkee weight room to see if we're gonna look at what we have up at Baker in terms of paying a coach's salary for that. So that's something we're going to look at. The other part of that is if there are any extra curricular intramurals that people are looking to run. We did want to have the money there. Obviously right now with our facilities not being there, with Baker and obviously getting Durkee's gym up and running, gym space is difficult. So if there is a possibility of doing any of the intramurals, we'll definitely do it, but we wanted to kind of keep it there to see if that came up so that we didn't lose opportunities for students in that regard. This part is, you'll see the biggest increase on this page includes the additional fall, winter, and spring modified coaches, and there's a lot of contractual salary increases. The big jump right here on the instructional salaries is the addition of modified coaches from fall, winter, and spring. We're looking at a lot of the teams that we have a lot of kids that are trying out and are not making the team. This is an excellent way to make sure that we can capitalize on those kids not getting cut and being able to prolong their athletics at the modified level for a couple of years to see what becomes of it. But adding these teams really equals adding opportunities for the kids. And I think it's a great way to enable our athletic programs and obviously the feeder programs to our JV and varsity teams. But again, as I said, it's giving kids opportunities for those seasons. Another, what was I gonna look at? The non-instructional, you'll see a jump there. That's where we're looking, as some of us mentioned earlier, with the threat detection and screening. We're also paying our staff for announcing games, clock, keeping the book, and there's a process that they follow, fill out a volunteer form for that, and we have them there for those games. So that's where that big jump is there from 20 to 57. And trying to look at, I mean, the rest of that is really kind of salary increases that we've had. Some have gone a little less, some have stayed the same.
Chris, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
And it's probably, you guys, I think, do a great job at this, but I get this question often from
Yep.
people. I'm assuming there's a metric you have where you say, you know, basketball team, football team, wrestling team, volleyball, this is the season, right? This is what the school is covering for the season. And I know often parents in booster clubs want more. Like, hey, we want to go to this tournament here. We want to go to this thing here. We want our kids to have this particular opportunity. And then a lot of times the booster clubs will kick in. How do you put that, is that, obviously this is more general overview.
Yep.
Is that something that you've scoped out ahead of time and you can just say, listen, the school's covering these tournaments and these activities, and then if you want to do more, go ahead?
Correct. So I have an Excel file that I track with the coaches from years ago to where we are now in terms of how many invitationals that, you know, whether it's indoor, outdoor, wrestling. And we'll talk at the end of each season just to make sure this is what we're going to cover. Obviously, some of these prices will go up, and that's where you'll see some of the increase based off of the contractual and other. But it's really to have a conversation of what we've done in the past, including JV as well, but being as consistent to, you know, wrestling. We will pay 4 varsity, and then the rest of the booster would have to pay. We also pay 2 JV, and just having that conversation with all of the coaches, volleyball, boys and girls. If they're looking to add an extra, obviously that's where, you know, we will ask the boosters to help out in that regard. But it's really a year-to-year basis. Sometimes, you know, like our cheerleader team this year decided to only go to 1 competition rather than 2. But it is allotted there for them, and it's really just the conversation that I have with the coaches at the year end.
So a lot of it's historic from years past, taking a look at what we've done.
Absolutely. The venue may change, but I'm still going to make sure that I pay for, you know, the invite of the tournament.
So one of the other things that, you know, we've been thinking about, and I think I mentioned this to the board when we were looking at adding additional modified sports. When we think about what we pay for as a school district, just like we're paying for, you know, everything we can to operate our visual and performing arts programs. The same thing I feel, you know, philosophically holds true with athletics as well. So I think things will continue to evolve. So if we know that, you know, within reason, right, we're not going to send teams to these extravagant, you know, tournaments or things like that, if they're going to go to every single tournament that they have as far as possibility, meeting their schedules and things like that. So within reason, I think over time we'll consider, you know, making adjustments so that, you know, ideally anything that is part of the regular season and it's not, again, extravagant, like we can't pay for the teams to go to Florida. But if it's within our area and it's a tournament that's going to help them prepare for, you know, the next steps, then I think that is something we should be covering as a district. That's me philosophically. I think I've had that conversation with all of you. So I think things will continue to evolve. It used to be very, very strict with, you know, as Chris mentioned, you got 2 teams here or 2 tournaments this, 1 this. Things evolve, and we're all about being flexible and But the key is the coach has to be advocating and providing the information ahead of time to the athletic department so that this isn't something that's just sprung on last minute. So as they have their end of the year meetings, when the season ends, they talk about the next upcoming season as part of their reviews, and if there are potential events that they would like to attend that they maybe haven't attended in prior years, and that is something that can be considered being added to the budget.
Joe, I like that. I mean, I think if section 3 allots, I know maybe a team will get so many points or whatever, so many activities that they can do in a particular sport. If the coach is proactive enough to plan out the season at that end of the year meeting and say, hey, I want to live up to my allotted points. I want our team to have all the opportunities that they possibly can that's allotted to them, then we should cover that as a district. And then obviously if they want to go beyond that, that's different. Okay.
I have a question. I appreciate that we are offering more modified opportunities to our students, and it seems like during the year we've approved agreements so that our students can participate in a sport in another district, and I was just wondering if one of them that comes to mind is women's ice hockey.
Yes.
And I think there may have been something else. Was there diving or, I can't remember something, but I'm just wondering if we're at a point now that we can offer some of these things here in Baldwinsville.
Yep, so each year we'll send out an interest letter of hockey, or if they'd like to participate at not mixed competition, I'm drawing a blank on Oswego, with the girls team to merge
It's a competition.
with them, so that they're able to participate with them. And I mean, we only get a handful of girls that are interested. If there is the interest there, you can see that with what we've done in the past with girls wrestling and flag football, we will put something together, but there's really gotta be a solid interest for it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And budgeting, ahead of time for that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was just wondering if there was any change that was reflected here in the numbers, but it sounds like there's not the level of interest yet.
There hasn't been, when Chris has done the interest surveys for girls ice hockey. I will say though, again, similar to the conversation earlier, there is flexibility within those instructional salaries where if we have to add
Yes.
additional, we've emphasized the modified this year, that's built into that budget. But there's also flexibility that based on numbers, if we need an additional assistant coach, or we decide to add a new varsity coach, we have flexibility with what we're proposing here that we can add those sports. It really all depends on student interest. So if we get enough girls that are interested in ice hockey, then that is something that we will seriously consider. It will create some challenges given the rental space with the track and what we have going on, but if we have enough interest, then we will do what we can to make it work.
Is there a modified team for every sport?
No, not every sport. Ice hockey, we don't have a modified team for. Girls wrestling, which I do see down the road. Cheerleading. But just about, we have just about every modified sport other than those crew. And that's really the overall budget from where we were, which I think is in a good spot.
So the majority of that increase is really based on additional opportunities for students. The one thing Chris didn't mention, but is within that contractual line, is we are also taking into consideration an increase in officials' fees, because Section 3 is on the cusp of, it's actually, should hopefully go out to vote within the next couple of weeks, the contract for the officials in our schools. So we are anticipating some changes there to retain, recruit, and just provide, fair compensation for those individuals that are officiating those contests. Anything else with athletics? And we will switch over to technology.
Good evening, everybody. So to start off, we have pretty much 3 sections of technology that we'll talk about. We have the 2110s, the 2610s, and the 2630s that we'll finalize. But as everyone was starting tonight, we like to highlight, I'm really proud of our team. As Renee noted, we have 5399, amount of students plus our staff, and we have a small tech team that supports this to keep everyone up and running. Some of the highlights, though, as you can see up on the screen, we're really proud of pushing the innovation with robotics and drone technology. Up on the left-hand side there, you see our 3rd graders using VEX equipment with instructional platforms with Project Lead the Way. They're saving a tiger over here, trying to incorporate those project-based and those authentic experiences. Of course, we try to, each year kind of capitalize on things that are going on in the nation, like Hour of Code, and I believe that's the event on the bottom right there. And then we're always mindful of getting to all the needs with, Carrie's department with special ed and some of the accessibility tools that we need, and the the technology that is going to help our students thrive, such as, communicative devices and vision devices as well. Our team consists of 6 people. So we have 1 network admin that does, day and night. He looks at our LAN and our WAN, and he's looking at infrastructure. We have another support LAN tech that's helping him because he's also dealing with a lot of account management. He's trying to keep all of our systems up and running on our instructional platforms. We have 4 LAN techs dedicated to buildings. I spread them out. They do a great job at trying to get to all the different needs through our help desk. And our help desk operator is a key point. So that she basically takes in and can take phone calls, take emails, and respond and help staff on the fly. But then also is very good at routing where our needs are. So if she needs to touch base with one of our LAN techs to get them deployed into a building, very easily that can happen. She does a great job at doing that. Along with that position, we have our Chromebook repair system. So our Chromebooks are aplenty. We have touch Chromebooks at K and 1, and we have 2nd grade all the way through 12th grade that operate on our Chromebooks 1-to-1. We were very fortunate years past to get to that 1-to-1 environment, so that there's that accessibility for students to get to instructional needs. With that comes with repair, right? We're going to see, Chromebooks being smashed into a book bag by accident, and we need to kind of look at that as a district need to constantly get to the repair and the loaners out to kids, so they're up and running for 40-minute periods at the secondary and all day long at your elementary level. We're also very fortunate in the summer. So summer becomes very busy for us because we're prepping out for the next year. So we're afforded 4 college kids that come back each year. I've had the same, or RJ, I should say, I'm new in the position, right? But we've had the same college students that come back year after year. And they really do a great job at helping our LAN techs pull apart equipment, clean equipment. They talk about wire management. They learn from our LAN technicians on how to get things up and running, enrolling Chromebooks at the 2nd grade level. We have brand new Chromebooks for the entire grade level. 6th graders get brand new Chromebooks as well. So our summer laborers help with enrolling, getting all those devices out into libraries so that at day 1, our students can walk in and have hands-on experience with the technology. So they do a great job. Our team is, again, small but mighty, I think RJ would say it in years past, but I'm very proud of our team. Getting into the 2110s, there's some overlap. I think Renee talked about the 200, the 2110s. Some of this equipment is for technology tables, standing desks, or desks that will elevate in certain cases so that you can get to certain needs in certain instructional areas that need that type of equipment. You're going to notice that most of our budget lines stay stable, so from 50,000 to 50,000. As you all know, though, we are 4% increase each year, like everyone talked about, with BOCES services. To note some of those BOCES services that our district relies on, we are a Google Workspace environment, so we rely heavily on Google with not only accounts on the Google side, but we also have instructional tools within the Google suite. Day-to-day operational Google Drive, Google Classroom, all those things are BOCES services. We have ClassLink. ClassLink is our provisioning. It's a one-sync system. It also helps with our account management. ClassLink will help with reset systems or reset passwords so that when a teacher gets the email that your password's expiring, ClassLink is the way to do it without even being in district. So they could be in home, sitting on their couch, and they can reset their password. Some of those other things that you see up there, Backupify. We always have to be mindful of our data. We always have to be protecting our data. We have Mimecast security, email security, so all of these go into the BOCES services. Phone services, Avaya, Northland, companies that we work with. So that's our 2110s, about 4% increase with our BOCES services. The next section, 2610, is our SLS. Our school library area is where we're going to notice some changes. We talked about TAs going to other areas to support other instructional needs. So we are taking away all salaries in the teaching assistant area within our budget and reallocating, to Jeremy's question before, reallocating teaching assistant positions to where we need them. So taking away some programming and getting to those student needs. With the other areas here, we do have just instructional salary increases. So clerical, instructional, and instructional are LMSs. Those are where those increases are for those 150 and 183 lines. So you do see the increases there. Next two lines are stable. This is our librarians with some of their needs right within their spaces. So year after year, they're looking at some equipment that they need. They do have those budget lines that stay stable from year to year. Some of the things that did go up, we are seeing more interest in broadcasting. Kids are really wanting to get into the Ray News program, the Durkee News, our BOCES, or I mean not our BOCES, our Baker News kids. And what we're trying to do is increasing mobility with really cool technology equipment of mobile cameras. I think I just got Durkee some cameras so that the kids can go around and interview students, and then also capitalize on the green screen rooms. At the bottom there, they do have their own BOCES services. So SLS, they have their databases, their Pebble Goes, their all their encyclopedia services. Brain Pop Media Connect is a big one, and we do see that 4% increase that we're trying to be mindful as things go up in cost. Overall, though, you do see a negative 15.7 decrease in this line of our budget due to the teaching assistant. And one other note: our library books are going down here as well. So you see 71,500 to 45,000. And what we're really trying to do here is be mindful of our district's switch to our capital projects. So as spaces are going under construction, we're trying to not buy so many books because we might need those for flex spaces. And then also with Ray becoming a 4, 5, 6 building, we're also looking at book collections and really knowing that our elementary books have to eventually move to Ray. So we want to kind of really get a good sense of clarity of what's already in our libraries, without buying additional, currently, just getting really good clarity and consistency before we move those books to where we need to in the future. And then the last area is, we are heavy on our hardware and our software here. So year after year, I've seen working with RJ, our state-aided hardware stays at $200,000. Our state-aided software stays at $153,000. And what we really try to do here with, I'll talk about the 220s here, is really keep spaces up and running, innovative. You may have noticed that your boardroom got upgrades this year, so new control panels. I have to keep these mics up and running, making sure that spaces such as larger, newer spaces like the Durkee Gym, you're outfitting some of those things that are large hardware components. But every instructional space, every classroom has a ClearTouch board at this point. Those are those rolling boards over there that we install on the classroom walls. And like any technology, it's going to wear out, or there's glitches, or there's, it's going to break. And we use that state-aided hardware to, repair or replace those things here. At the top there, non-instructional salaries, that's our team. That's just our increases in our contracts. The next line down for equipment. This is our technical equipment, such as dock and webcams. Some of our teachers love the IPEVO dock cams. It's very easy for us to take even this water bottle and put it underneath and talk about the three-dimensionality of things in art, particularly. In our classrooms, that's easy to do with a dock cam, so we try to keep a good stock of equipment. And then the last thing there, again, going into some of the other materials and supplies, we really pride our infrastructure, right? Our network is our backbone, and if our network is not working, none of these fancy devices that we buy is not going to work, right? So we really have dedicated our staff to get around in our data closets. They're called IDFs or MDFs. We get to looking at equipment called flukes, so we can send light down fiber optics to see if there's termination sites that are working on both sides. We're looking at port identification, server identification, switches, things like that. So that's where you see this budget line stay stable with that money to be fortunate to get the equipment that we need. And then the last thing to highlight here in the software is just your site licenses and building licenses. Some of those are BOCES, COSERs, but in this case, if something comes up and we do want to have that state-aided software, we have that opportunity to buy that software that we need for our students. Overall, you'll see my budgets, our budget for technology is decreasing 7.9% in this year, and that's due to the TAs and the library books going down.
Hey, Joe, if we think about tech going into the new spaces, or like Baker Gym, that's accounted for in the building project, right?
Some of the equipment is, and then some of the equipment in our meetings as we plan things out, they're working with technology. So last year when we finalized the plans and went out to bid, RJ would have been a part of those conversations for Baker specifically. And Eric's been in dialogue with our folks as we've planned for Ray.
Any other questions?
All right, we'll switch to transportation.
Good evening. Is it working? Yep. Thank you. So if you look at our first slide up there, you'll kind of see how the department work looks right now. We do have one clerical account clerk that assists me, but thanks to the board and the district, we are grateful that after our safety officer transitioned to another opportunity for himself, that you were willing to give us an assistant transportation director in the department, which is very much appreciated. not only by myself, but also the staff. There's only so much for the size of our staff that I can do, and I need help, and that helped us out a lot. She's been with us for a short time, but has made huge improvements with both of us being in the department. We do have 2 dispatchers and the 1 pupil transportation analyst. We have 7 mechanics. We're back up to 7 mechanics, which is very much needed in our department with the amount of miles that we travel and the hours that we put on our buses. The increments of time that we have to bring them into the shop is very important, that we keep on top of that for our DOT passing rate. Currently, we have 109 drivers. That's including our substitutes. I have been fortunate enough, not just me, but our team, to get us back up to where we have about 15 subs right now in the department, which was unheard of a couple of years ago. Staff is actually able to focus on maintaining buses, and we're able to stay in the building and deal with what we need to deal with as far as routing and concerns from parents. We have 37 attendants. It seems like a lot, but it's really not. I could use more, but that's including the 14 substitutes that we have. As we have been speaking throughout the night, we do have a large amount of students that need special services on the buses too. And we're trying to even be more, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, but we're trying to make it more inclusive for them to ride on the buses, so they're not just on a special needs bus. If we have the ability, we're trying to bring them in with a general setting of students on the buses, so everybody feels the same being transported to school. Miles, boy, do we do a lot of miles. We're 1.4 million miles. We cover 80 square miles, if you were unaware of that. We're obviously 100% student-centered. Maybe sometimes we miss a student, but I always make sure that we go back and we get that student. We've all had the day when we've been late getting out of bed, so we go back and we make sure they get to school. They may be a little bit behind schedule, but we get them there. After all the new buses come in for this year, we're expecting our last delivery on the 18th of December for the rest of our buses, except for 2. We're waiting for 2 after that, but we'll be at 132 school buses. That's with our spare buses. And on any week, we have at least 6 buses out for DOT inspections and then for regular work orders. So we have about 10 to 13 buses that are out of service, so we need the spare buses to keep our routes flowing. Our DOT rate's been staying pretty consistent. We're 97 to 99%. That's year to year. We have 94 consistent bus routes. We have 6,100 students that are eligible for transportation that are in our system, but we do not all transport. Some are homeschooled, but they are actually in our, if they ever were to transition into using our buses.
So Corey, if I may, that kind of floored me when I saw that stat, because we have 5,400 students in our school, but there's 6,100 eligible for transport. How many do we transport to other school districts?
We're, boy, sorry, I should have that number off the top.
That's
of my
okay,
head.
just
But
curious.
no, that's not, our private parochial and our BOCES students are all part of that number.
Yes, I know they are.
But no, but I can get the total number that we
But
actually
the
transport.
BOCES students are included in our 5,400, right?
Yes.
I know that we have at least 300 to 400 students that are homeschooled.
Okay.
But I can get you, for the board, I can get you all the numbers, because it's in our routing software, who rides and who doesn't.
Yeah, it just, the number was kind of surprising that you got any more. But I do know that that homeschooling has been an increasing, item throughout the United States, so I guess I should have expected that. So, can I ask you just one more question? Do you know what our rider rate is? For instance, how full of our buses is what I'm trying to ask you?
We're averaging, out of the 6,100 students that are eligible for riding, we're averaging between 49 to 5,000 students daily. The buses are full. We are transporting students. Sometimes it doesn't look like it, especially depending on the year. Like if it's a busy sports time of the year, then numbers are down because students are getting transported by parents. Sometimes you'll notice the buses are they have more students on when the weather is, we get towards summertime and then the number of students that actually drive, but we're starting to see an increase with our secondary schools right now because the weather has turned earlier, with the amount of snow we've been getting. So we've noticed that more high school students are riding now. We're going to start with our 5510 codes. I'm just going to point out some of the highlights, increases and decreases. For the most part, many of them have stayed the same due to contract, the 4% raise in that, but we have seen some changes because of the changes in staff. So we had a decrease. If you look at 5510-165 and you look at 5510-161, there was a decrease in 65 because part of the safety officer's position was in the dispatcher salaries. So that decreased, and you'll see an increase in the 6100 due to transportation supervisor salary. So that's mine, part of Rick's salary, and the assistant's salary in there. If you look at the mechanics salary extra time, we are expecting that to stay decreased. There will always be some extra time that we need them due to whatever the case may be, cold starts, getting the buses ready during the winter. But due to the fact that we're increasing the amount of subs that we have that are able to drive, they are going out less over their time to drive for us. Obviously, if there's a sickness in that, they still end up going out, but for the most part, we have cut back on that so far. I wanted to go down, if there's no questions for the upper part there for the different salaries, I'd like to go down to the 5510, 200, 20, and 22. The equipment for transportation, we're proposing a new Suburban to give the district flexibility with the amount of, we're taking sports, we're taking 1 or 2 students for championships and that, where a coach will drive those students. We don't need to take a full-size bus. We also have had an increase in McKinney-Vento students, and it's not always possible to put them all on one run. We may have one student that is 40 miles in one direction, so it's much more cost-effective for the district. The 3 Suburbans that we have are in very good shape, but they are starting to age and get miles on them, so we'd like to start incorporating another one so that we have some newer equipment when we do have to travel further distances for student safety. So that was the $70,400 for a new Suburban. Below that, you'll see $17,000, and that's for our new push blade for the payloader. We need a new one to keep our parking lot safe for our employees, to keep the snow moved away. So we're asking for the $17,000 to get a new push blade for the payloader. Oh. You made me lose my train of thought.
Right after push blade.
So you'll see a decrease in the contractual transportation items. We're going down to $361,000 because over the last couple of years we have introduced a lot of different technology, such as upgrading the cameras on the buses. We have gotten the tablets for the drivers. I think that's part of the reason why we're being so successful with our substitutes, is that now anybody could sub on a bus as long as you got a license, because the routing software takes you right there. There are obviously sometimes little glitches here and there, but it shows you the students' pictures will come right up when they get to the stop, so they know that they're picking up the correct students on that run. And it's very good technology. I've even had to use it, and it's great. I like it a lot. So you'll see that it's gone down because we spent all that money over the last couple of years, so now it's just maintenance fees for the regular subscriptions. And of course, everything is for the safety of our students, and we appreciate everything that the board allows us to do. All of the new buses coming in are air conditioned, fully air conditioned. They have all the new safety cameras on the outside so we can see the blind spots on the vehicles. The drivers are extremely, extremely appreciative of everything that you do for us.
Did you want to talk about this, or did Tiffany or I can, for that matter? 14 buses, correct?
We got 14 buses total. One thing I should probably talk about, we did get different sizes. We are seeing certain neighborhoods there have an influx of students, and instead of trying to route 2 buses in there, we did order 77 passenger buses. We also are using some of the 77 passenger buses on our BOCES runs, because it allows us to spread out the students a little bit more, give them a little bit more space so they're not on top of each other all for that long of a ride. And then for our sports, it'll help because when we have shuttles and we need to get a mass amount of students places, we have extra seats. We gain about 8, for a secondary student, we gain 8 seats on each of those buses, which doesn't seem like a lot, but in the end, that's a huge difference when you're trying to get students to where they have to go. We have purchased 30 passenger buses with wheelchair lifts in them, and that gives us more flexibility when you go back to the inclusion of students, because you may have a student that is mobility impaired, that needs special trans, but they want to ride with their friends, and now we can route them on a gen ed bus because we'll have more seats available.
So this specific second proposition, if we move forward at this point in time, like I mentioned and Corey highlighted, 14 vehicles will be on the, if we move forward with adopting that resolution. That dollar amount not to exceed $2.8 million. All of them have air conditioning, as Corey mentioned, and the cost, local share, about $121,000 over that 5-year period. So this allows us to maintain our bus replacement plan, and consistent to the number that we purchased the last few years. We have chosen not to move forward with an electric vehicle based on conversations over the last 2 years, and we believe there's certainly flexibility at this point. There will continue to be dialogue at the state level about where that zero emissions plan moves forward, but at this time we just didn't feel like it was appropriate based on prior conversations.
So that can be an open conversation if somebody on the board feels strongly one way or another that we should, but that seems to be the consensus so far that we're not interested in doing that this year.
So if, as Vic mentioned, if that does change, we do have a slide ready for that. We can certainly add that to the conversation when you adopt the budget and the propositions in March.
Anecdotally, just wanted to say the routing tech is awesome. I noticed a difference. Just you don't see a confused sub late trying to figure out where to pick a kid up, and I think just for parents, the act of checking the kid in when they get on the bus and checking them out when they get off is just a calming. Like it's great. So I noticed it this year. It was a great thing to get.
Well, I appreciate your feedback, and one other thing I just wanted to say is that those tablets, not only for our routing for our students when they're going to school and coming home from school, it has helped. We have had a huge increase in overnight trips for our sporting teams and clubs, and we're traveling many miles down the road, and we're able to, with the new software, to put in the directions for those trips. Drivers can actually log in, so now parents can have a little bit more release that things are going to be okay when their children are riding hundreds of miles out of district on our school vehicles.
And I think the coolest feature with that software and that tablet system is the fact that when students stay after school, that's unpredictable, right? We have general routes that the buses go for after school, but when the students check in for the late bus, and the driver just has to hit a little button, and it will optimize a route that will get those students home in the most efficient way, which is awesome.
Yeah.
From what I've been told.
Yeah, like I said, every now and then there are little glitches, there's technology, but we, overall, it works very well. And I don't know how many of you either have grandchildren or children in the district that receive all the notifications on the My Ride app, but it'll tell you if the bus is running early, if it's running a little bit late. When we've had, I'll admit it, we make errors too. We forget to change the bus number, and we get calls from the parents right away. Why is my bus still sitting in no, it's on its way, we forgot to change the number. But truly, on behalf of myself and all my staff, we appreciate everything that you allow us to have in the district.
Any other questions for Corey? We'll shift over to operations with Chris.
Hey everyone, first time presenter for everybody here, so forgive me if I stumble over some things or forget something. We have a small crew on the operations department here for facilities of 63 folks, starting with Tammy, who does a great job helping us out, managing phone calls from phone systems to subbing folks, elevator repairs, and you name it. There's tons of stuff that she does to help us out, and she's doing a great job. Other great help comes from our two crew leaders. Al's replacement as of late, which is Peter Rappel, so he's running the grounds team around, which is 8 folks. And they do everything from striping the lawn so beautifully to plowing the parking lots, as you've seen most recently, to moving stuff from building to building. So they are truly the firemen of the district, running all over the place. Rich Carpenter, maintenance team leader, so he's running 5 of our maintenance guys. Baker being the only building that has a resident maintenance guy. The other ones are moving back and forth between the buildings and spreading their time out as needed based on what Rich Carpenter deems necessary, from general maintenance to preventative maintenance measures. So they're constantly moving as well. We have our driver messenger, who shares his time with food service, so he's doing everything from mail to food service deliveries daily. And then we have our custodial crew, 46 folks spread among the buildings, doing a great job mingling with our maintenance team and our grounds team, so they cross-support each other regularly. As you can see here, we have 3 updated pictures, and on the far left, that would show you an indicator that from our nearly 1 million square feet of building square footage, I think we're down probably 10 or 15%, currently not being used. But as you can see in the middle picture on the right, just what comes of all the capital projects that we're doing, from the brand new gymnasium at Derby to the fantastic sports complex there, recently completed. And I can speak to Chris's point here that there's a lot of enthusiasm from the community and a lot of pride with the building custodians, specifically at the Derby Gymnasium. They're very excited about being able to manage that and keep it as new as possible, as long as possible. So moving forward here, generally speaking, all of our numbers have pretty well stayed in alignment with the 4% cost increase from the salaries on everybody, our equipment budgets, our contractual obligations, and all the way down to our material supplies. That's changed a little bit because some of that money is shifted over to the next slide. But we've done well with that, and it seems to be pretty good over the years from what I've reviewed, where we're consistent with our numbers. let's see, and that same rolls over to this slide here with our numbers staying pretty stable. There, you'll notice on there that there's two numbers that have a pretty substantial increase, and I'll just call it right out. Line item 200 for equipment there. We put in the budget for a new dump truck, and this particular dump truck is one of our bigger heavy movers. That's the one you see there orange driving around the district. They have the big wing blade on the side. Those trucks are expensive. The one we want to replace is about 20 years old. Although we do take good care of the vehicles in the district, unfortunately, the parts are very difficult to find. As we found out last year, if I remember correctly, it was a turbo, and somebody knew somebody out in the Midwest, and they were able to ship in a turbo. Without it, the machine's not running, and that's going to impact how quickly we can clear snow. So, being that it's so aged, we thought it prudent to put a budget line item together so we can get a new one in there. And then the other one is our contractual line item number 400. Now with our new Evolve systems in there for our threat detection in the schools, that comes along with a little bit of a bump on our contractual obligation for our for maintaining those with the company. Like I said, everything else is right around the 4% increase. So the 8% you see on the bottom there, that's because of the truck and the Evolve systems.
Any questions for Chris regarding the operations budget?
I have kind of a high-level question, and Rick may want to take this, but I'm just wondering how the Army-Navy game turned out. Good guys by 1 point. Thank you.
I just had a question in regards to the tech and that increase. Is that something similar to like with the arts, fine arts program, that once we get to that level that's going to maintain, or is that something that's going to continue to go up, you think?
For which line item?
For the one that went up, you were saying for the Evolve system and stuff, 400, I think it was?
Yeah.
So is that going to continue to go up, or is that one that's going to get to a point and then kind of level out?
I would expect that to maintain a level across. It's an annual maintenance contract.
I would anticipate that being, you know, a 4% increase in the following year around that amount. So it'll hover around the $400,000 range.
Going forward?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. We then shift to Tiffany, who will talk briefly about the admin, benefits, debt, and capital portion. This is our final chunk.
This is our administrative staffing in the district office. We have our PR person, 5 cabinet members, 6.5 folks in the business office, which we have reduced by one over the last handful of years due to efficiencies in the office, as well as 5 administrative support folks. Okay, so the first 1,000 codes here are going to be for our Board of Education contractual line items, including graduation services, which comes out of the board's budget, and we've been transitioning that out of the Baker High School principal's budget into the board's budget, where it is most appropriate. And then we also have our contractual professional development conferences, meetings, and travel budget, as well as our materials and supplies budget. And then just below that, the 1060 code is for our annual budget vote. This includes items like our legal notices, our moving of our voting machines, rental fees for the machines, ballot printing, and our machine technicians for the annual budget vote. So that's about a 4% increase on that budget. Then we have our chief school administrator. Here you'll see that contractual salary increases are the for the superintendent and clerical staff in that office are the larger portion of the budget. The smaller areas include the contractual conference meetings and travel and materials and supplies. With most contractual salary increases, I think we need to note that there have been offsetting benefit concessions during negotiations, which you will see as I go through the benefits budget. Okay. And then we have the business office budget, which includes my salary as well as our clerical support and our district treasurer and accountant. The overall budget's going up about 5.4%. And you'll also see in here we have a small amount for equipment and contractual conference, meeting and travel. And again, BOCES services are projecting a 4% increase. We won't receive our final BOCES numbers until February, and we will review those numbers as we get closer to that time. Okay, so we have our auditing services, which includes our external auditors, our internal auditors, and our claims auditor. We're projecting about a 3% increase on that. We did go out for an RFP this year for external auditing services, which we'll be reviewing at our audit committee meeting in January. Again, we have, below that is the 1330 tax collector budget, which includes the printing and mailing of our tax bills, as well as 1380, our fiscal agent fees, which are going to remain relatively flat as most of those fees will be shifted to our construction budgets as they help us with those finances. Okay. So legal services fees we're projecting to remain relatively flat. And then we have our personnel office budget, including our assistant superintendent for human resources and the clerical staff within that office. There is a decrease in the contractual services for a contract that we have with higher ed for student teachers. So there's been some challenges with recruitment and retention, and we've reduced that slightly. Yeah, there. Yep. The 1460 code, which is records management, includes some record storage that we pay for a third party, as well as BOCES, who helps with the disposal and maintenance of our records management. That budget's going up 3.3%, and then we have our 1480 public information services, which includes our PR staff, as well as contractual services for our printers, and as well as small material and supply budget. That's going up about 3.5%. 1670 central printing and mailing. This is our courier, half of the salary, as the other half is going through the food service department with the new community eligibility program. We split that salary between the general fund budget and the food service budget. And we also have our materials and supplies, which is our mailing postage fees. And then we have the 1910, which is our unallocated insurance. We're projecting a 6% increase. I'm still waiting to hear back more finalized numbers from our insurance representative on that. We did go out with an RFP in 2022, which helped us to remain relatively with small increases over time in that budget. The 1920 is our school association membership fees, and we're projecting 4% on that.
This is a small item, but is that just the New York State School Board fee in there?
No.
It's
No,
CNY
several
fee?
districts, yeah,
Oh,
memberships.
okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, and then we have our 1950 assessments on school property, which includes our water and sewer tax bills for the county and towns. That's anticipated to go up about 11.5%. And then our 1964 refund on real property taxes is remaining flat. That's for usually clerical errors when the tax bills are issued. And then we have our 1981. Again, we're projecting a 4% until we have finalized numbers for the BOCES administrative fees. So our overall administrative budget is anticipated to go up 3.44%. Okay, so we're moving into, before we move into the benefits component, just talk about that our voters authorized the $32 million project in the year 2022. That majority of that work is ongoing at Turkey. And we also have our $63.9 million capital project approved in May of 23, where the multi-purpose field is now open, and we are continuing to work on renovations at Baker, and they are ongoing. Our voters authorized the 10-year capital project plan of $242 million, and we are hoping to start phase 1 renovations at Ray and Reynolds, anticipated for February 26th. And then we also have our annual school bus propositions, and as well as the benefits component outlay. As I mentioned, we had some benefit concessions during our contractual negotiations. So we move on. Okay. So the 90/10 is our New York State Local Employees Retirement System employer contribution. It's anticipated to go up from 16.5% of our non-instructional salaries to 17.6% for next year. So you'll see that increase in there coupled with our contractual salary increases. Our teachers' retirement system increase. Currently, we're paying a 9.59% of our instructional salaries towards the teachers' retirement system. We had historically been low in that budget, and we have utilized a new tool in WinCap to help project out the estimate for next year. So you will see that there is a 10% increase in that budget right now. Again, we were a little low. We're projecting 8.75% of salaries as a contribution for TRS. And that tool looks at every salary that might be eligible for a contribution for TRS, and not every salary in the instructional salaries is eligible. So that's why we did an 8.75%. And then we have our Social Security, FICA, and Medicare, and we're projecting a 5.5% increase there.
Tiffany, this isn't in your realm, but it strikes me that the teacher contribution is 9-point-something%, but the employee contribution was 17. So what's the big difference? How come one, obviously that means the teacher plan is funded much better than the employee plan, and do we have any understanding as to why? That, I know it's outside of your realm, I just wanted to.
Yeah, it may be where they have their investments, might be a little more volatile in some areas and whatnot. I used to go to a presentation by actuarial that works for the New York State Teachers Retirement System, and they're very conservative and planning projections.
Okay, I guess that maybe New York State School Boards can help us with that, but that, it's just kind of curiosity that would not seem like they flow kind of similar, right? But obviously they're very different, so thank you.
Yes, good question. So then we have our 90/40, our workers' compensation. We're projecting a 6.6% increase in that budget, but we'll have hopefully a final projection in January when our consortium meets. We have the 90/50 unemployment insurance. We're projecting a 3% there increase, and then our 90/55 disability insurance remaining flat. Our 90/60, so this is where you're gonna see the offset of the health insurance concessions. We have here under our health insurance, 3.86% increase with a projection of 6% currently, which is where our consortium has pretty much held all of our premium increases over the last couple of years. And that also maintains our fund balance, which we had historically budgeted on the expense side in the health insurance budget. So, and then we also have our 90/89 other health employee benefits. Well, that will remain flat at $450,000. Okay, and here we have our leases. A couple of years ago, we had the new GASB 45, where we had to shift our leases out of the BOCES budget into the 9,000 codes. So you'll see that we do have an adjustment there for interest and principal, continuing that shift out of the BOCES budget. And with those increases, you'll also see a corresponding BOCES aid increase when we review revenues in January. The 9901 transfers to other funds debt service. This increase is $4.7 million. This is for our ongoing capital projects, but you will see a corresponding building aid increase when we review the revenues in January for that. And then our 9950 transfer to capital, that is for our capital outlay project, which we are looking at doing an outdoor space at Reynolds, as well as interior lockers, or no, I'm sorry, doors for next year. And so then our total benefits and debt service budget, increase is about 13.3%. Again, the majority of it being, that increase in the leases and interest as well as our debt service budget, and they both have corresponding state aid increases for those increases. And the overall budget to budget is going up 7.88%. It would be without the increase in debt service, a 4.5% increase budget to budget. Last year, our budget to budget increase without the debt service increase was a 3.4%. So we're trying to stay in line with the 4% increase. And the next slide, our budget drivers are mostly contractual salary increases of $3.7 million, our benefits $2 million, and our debt service $4.8 million. Any questions?
Any questions, just overall questions regarding debt service or just the total general fund budget? If there are none, our next steps at this point, we will have the continued conversation at our January 26th board work session, where we hope to have the governor's runs and we can talk about the revenue side of the budget along with any other changes that we make between now and that time. As I mentioned earlier, sometime in February or March, you will adopt the proposed budget. And then we will begin our community outreach presentations and have the public hearing on May 11th and hopefully a successful budget vote on May 19th.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, so any other general questions from anybody? Just,
So we're not asking for any capital beyond the buses? We're just requesting?
Correct, there's just gonna be two propositions this year. We are continuing to look at, hopefully, we have the capital reserve that we were able to fund, that was approved last year. At this point, hopefully we'll be able to add some additional funds at the end of this year, and some point, in a future budget year, we'll be talking about, next steps as mentioned with the facilities meeting, but our goal is just the two propositions in the board, elections this year.
well, thank you, everyone. Very good. Yeah, nice, yeah, round of applause. I've been through a lot of these, and I'm very, very impressed with the level of detail. And, we always talk about our mission and our vision. Our first obligation is to students and do the best we can for them. But I think this board is very aware that we have an obligation to our community to see that their tax dollars are spent as efficiently as possible. And it impresses me how each of you take ownership for your budget area as well as your professional obligations. And I think that's so important because a lot of people say to me that school ought to be run like a business. Well, when you take control of your budgets, you are running it like a business. And that's really important. So thank you to everyone. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
And hearing no further business, our December 13th or December 15th work session will declare adjourned. Thank you, Luke.
Loki! Oh, we know Loki!